Hey guys, good morning, and thanks for checking out your latest long range forecast analysis. Michael Clark here with BAM Weather. If you've been following along now for the last couple of weeks here on our Twitter page, we've been talking about a slow change into the pattern, a breakdown of the vortex, and really potentially looking at a very wintry late January into February. Honestly, what I want to talk to you about today is just the divide in the risks here for mid-month. It honestly is a 50-50, or maybe you could even call it a 60-40% risk that mid-month has just a huge blast of Arctic air, or it can be milder depending on where the vortex decides to go. If you ask the evening runs of the weather models, the polar vortex comes down over the Great Lakes by day 14, 15. That can change as early as 6 hours from now. That can change 15 times between now and the next 15 days. And so all legitimate concerns, MJO4 could be totally squashed and muted by the lobe of the vortex coming over the Great Lakes. Or MJO4 could be a legitimate warm risk because the lobe of the vortex doesn't cooperate right away and it's mild mid-month, colder late month. We got some options here. And anyone that's saying they have this guaranteed bona fide outcome and they know the outcome, it's just not being truthful. So I'm going to analyze it for you. I'm going to tell you what the scenarios are and leave it at that. I'm not going to come on here and pretend like I have the answers to everything because I don't. I'll make a prediction, but I'm going to be honest with you at the same time. You like it or not, it doesn't really matter. These are the facts. Evening model run changes, okay? Top left GFS American model week 2 change trended much colder. You can see what it did here with over the Great Lakes. That is an indication, no question about it, of the polar vortex coming in over the Great Lakes on the American Ensemble product and the operational. European got colder as well. The actual week 2 forecast now, basically January 3rd through the 9th. Very cold here at Great Lakes East. European, very similar, not as cold, but still colder for a majority of the country here into week 2. So colder trends overnight and a cold forecast into week 2 for sure, for the most part here, okay? Let me fix my little screen here for you. There we go. So this is what we're monitoring, and I'm going to try to. I'll tell you what. I'm going to move these up a little bit because the camera might be blocking these. We have the Pacific pattern that essentially is not cooperating for the most part, and then we have the northern hemisphere, the higher latitudes that's starting to cooperate. Right, we're starting to see big trends into negative Arctic oscillation, negative North Atlantic oscillation. And listen, there's a lot of research here. There's a lot of evidence that supports this negative NAO is going to be here for a while. It's going to be here for quite a while and probably even into early spring. This is going to be a permanent feature for quite some time that can certainly aid in the storminess into the eastern U.S. and then into New England, certainly for late January into February and maybe even in through early March. The problem is then the EPO, okay? As we start to look at this neutral forecast, we look at this negative P&A forecast, a lot of signals of a negative P&A and a retracted jet. And so that's certainly a risk here, okay? Years where we've had that particular setup, on the left, these are negative, strong negative AO, NAO, with a positive EPO Januaries. Okay, 2016, 2011, 2004, 2001, 1998. The only one with an El Nino in that particular setup is January of 1998. That is absolutely blowtorched in January. Now, here's the difference. Calm down. January of 1998, we didn't split the vortex down, right? That's the difference here. And that's why I'm saying if the vortex split doesn't cooperate, the NAO and the AO, it's great that it's negative. It does not guarantee cold delivery if the vortex, the core of the coldest air on the planet, doesn't come into a favorable position. Okay? An example of this is 1998 because the Pacific air, it was just too mild. It didn't matter that we had the negative NAO and the AO. It just got incredibly warm. That's a +8 anomaly there in the Northeast in January of 1998. Okay, so those are some things I'm watching. Now, again, let's look at day 1 to 5. This is the mega ensemble. This is all the ensembles from all the data. All right, European GFS and or European, American, and Canadian. Day 1 to 5, we see this Canadian ridge feature, retrograding, big trough developing. We talked about this for a minute. This is poleward now at this point. We're seeing the negative NAO develop here in the 6 to 10, and the trough and the storminess underneath. The chances for bigger snowstorms or bigger winter storms will dramatically increase into the first week of January, we believe, especially around the 6th through the 9th or so. And then that 10 to 15 day time frame, massive negative NAO signal, a negative Arctic oscillation signal, and just really an ideal look here. You've got this ridge bridge over the top, okay, and you are sending in Arctic air. That's what the evening models did. They said by January 10th, we're gonna flood in Arctic air, okay. And the reason we're going to do that is because the vortex splits, it goes into a favorable position. Okay, well, let's look at that, right? Take the video up over here so you can kind of see this a little bit better. Actually, let's put it right here. EPS has been consistent on a breakdown of the vortex around the 8th or so, a wind reversal, okay? We're seeing the vortex split. Evening EPS puts the lobe here of the vortex. It's important, I've talked about this, it's not about the colors, it's about the center of circulation, it's about the heights. The lobe of the vortex right here, it's split in two. It's right over the Great Lakes here on the evening of January 6th. All right. Now, leading up to the split, this is the analog. This is the forecast right now. This is day 1. This is today. I mean, it's extraordinarily warm east. This is a great indication that leading up to the split, this is what the pattern is going to look like. As soon as the split happens, so January 7th, 8th, or 9th, this is the research. You can see the CONUS is covered in cold. This is the forecast model. This is basically day 13, day 12. This is the morning of January 7th. Very, very similar look here. Okay, a complete split would indicate it's cold. If the lobe of the vortex comes like the model shows here, I think it can totally negate MJO4 and the warmer risks there that the MJO presents, if that's where it can go. I have to highlight and stress to you guys that these forecasts of this vortex can change dramatically at the drop of a hat. And so I think that's why I'm 60-40. I'm 60% now confident, if you will, that this Arctic air blast can come earlier. I'm 40% concerned that it can change. All right, it's the best way to put it right now. Okay, here's what I have in the 20 to 30 day time frame down here after the split. You can see just CONUS cold. It's very cold. I showed the North Pacific pattern because indications are late month, mid to late January into February, a more persistent, stormier, colder pattern is likely. I just don't want to be the guy that tries to swing for the fences and speed this thing up. That's my biggest concern. I'm not saying it can't happen. I just don't want to speed it up. Okay. Again, this is the leading up to the split. Last 4 events here. Just looking at the most recent 4 splits, this looks exactly like the modeling. 500 millibar heights. Here's 6 to 10. All right, and then here's the 21 to 30 day period after. It's just a classic ideal winter pattern. Okay, so if we split on the 9th, let's call it the 8th. 20 days is the 28th of January into the 10th of February. If you go 21 to 30, if you will, that's what the pattern would expect it to be looking like late month into February. Okay, just for clarity purposes there on how those work. Okay, here's our superclusters looking at all the ensembles, all the different ones between the big 3 members. You kind of see the possible outcomes here. Cluster 2 really is a potential where the vortex lobe does not come here and MJO4 takes over by day 15. That's cluster 2. Cluster 2 is MJO4 is prevalent. Mild Pacific air is there. The southeast can stay cooler because of the negative NAO, but the MJO4 wins out, vortex doesn't come east. This is a situation, cluster 1, where the vortex lobe is further west. Cold air dumps west, it's still warmer east because of MJO4. Follow me? Cluster 3 is gangbusters, we're dumping it down. You're gonna get incredibly cold. Here's what's interesting. Cluster 3 has the most members, 39 versus 31 and 33. Okay, so you could say, almost 40% of the clusters say this is what's going to happen. So that's interesting. Now, here's why cluster 1 and cluster 2 cannot be totally ignored. Look at where the warmth is. Look at El Niños with MJO4. Okay, ECMWF says we're going into phase 4. It's no question. Day 15 to 20, it's there. There's the analog. Look at the big ridge there. Yeah, negative NAO. I get it, but there's no Arctic air available in that particular scenario. Okay, so that's this concern there. So here's our scenarios. Okay, scenario number 1. I should have had this on the left. Let's do this. Let's just to make it make sense. Scenario number 1 is the vortex splits here on the and dumps the Arctic air further west. Okay. Scenario 2 is that it splits over the Great Lakes and dumps it right there. Here's the deal. We have to wait and see. This is literally a 50-50 outcome right now, in my opinion. It's 50-50. Scenario 1 would be warmer east. Okay, potentially above normal in New England and the Great Lakes, out ahead of big storm systems where you pump up warm air out ahead of it. It's all dependent on this. Watch what the GFS does with the vortex. Splits it, okay? Initially, watch where the lobe goes, right there over the Great Lakes. Where does it end up? Well, the warming ends up on the other side of the hemisphere, and we stay in cold air supply. Remember, you have to have a cold source to get cold. That's how these work. Just because the vortex splits doesn't mean it stays cold forever. If it retreats and goes to the other side, it's difficult to stay cold. Okay? With that said, ensembles from the American and the European, they're encouraging on potentially saying, hey, there's probabilities right now showing up of 6 or more inches of snow in the next 2 weeks. Nothing to bat an eye at. There's probabilities there, especially in New England. Okay, big snow chances, 6 inches or more next 2 weeks. All right, American too. So the pattern's going to get cold. It's going to get stormy, and there's a potential that again that by day 15, by January 9th, cluster 3 has merit if the vortex can cooperate, but a combination of 1 and 2 has merit if the vortex does not cooperate. So that's where we are. I would call it 60-40. Some people, responsibly, you might have to call it 50-50. And you're going to go, well, that's not a forecast. And what's the difference? Well, hey, whatever. That's how I honestly feel about it this morning. That's the latest. We'll keep you posted. We'll chat soon.